Greetings, EQOA community. How's it going? This is Jeremiah. You may also know me as a Lutra on YouTube. I'm here to discuss a new document that I have to assist in EQOA quests. I'm pretty excited about it. I've been working on it off and on for 6 years, and the last several months I've had time to compile a very recent and up-to-date version that I'm going to show you today. So just to talk about it a little bit, the EQOA Quest Maker, it's an elaborate Excel workbook document. It's been tailored to handling the content of a quest writer and systematically arranging it to emulate the structure of EQOA quests, while also providing output spreadsheets that could be uploaded to a private server. Quest writers would use this document to input pronouns for quest NPCs, items, mobs, which is also compiled for a secondary input process, providing essential complementary content to the dialogue. Using rudimentary procedural generation, tags are automatically created for quest NPCs, items, flags, and scripts. These will help keep track of everything on both the Quest Maker side and the server's database. Each workbook is built to handle the 10 starter city quests for each race class combo. So that's levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, 13, 15, and 20. And then there are 75 race class combinations in EQOA Frontiers. So that's a total of 750 starter quests to be restored. This is a process working towards proof of concept. Once we have streamlined the process of uploading quest content to a server, we will have a palette to continue with the rest of EQOA's quests with some minor reconfiguration. I'm considering this a beta. For the most part, this is functioning the way I intend it to, but I need some community feedback to see what could be made better. Once I've processed any feedback from the community, I'll further update the document for a version 1.0 release. So I'm going to break this down further, but if you just wanted a quick snippet of this announcement, that was it. Everything here forward is going to be some pretty detailed breakdown looking at an Excel sheet. So if that doesn't sound exciting to you, feel free to turn off this video. But I realize I'm actually talking to 3 different potential groups of the community. One is just general community people interested in any sort of updates at all. I'm also talking to potential quest writers here, people that might participate in helping to actually restore the dialogue and the pieces that go along with that. And then I'm also talking to anybody who might potentially be working on a private server or the database associated with that. So I'll try to address each of you as they go along. So here we go. We're going to look at our Excel sheet here, and it doesn't look pretty, but we're just going to roll with it. Here in the introduction, you can input your name, and so we'll just put in Jeremiah like this, and you'll notice that right over here it automatically changed that. For those of you who aren't super familiar with Excel, this is one of its cool functions, is that it can put words together, sentences and such. So if you double click on this, it shows that, hey, there's this box, and then it grabs this box, and it assembles them all together, and that's a lot of what is going on. Just a little bit more intricate than that. This first page has some introduction information about what's going on the rest of the book, but we'll get back to that later. This tab called Master Server Output. This is largely the results of all of the work that you might put into this workbook. It is on one tab, it's all the 10 starter city quests. So theoretically, you could just go and grab whatever data you're wanting to for the server here, and you could go grab the whole thing. If I scroll all the way down, sorry, I'm going to just go through this real fast just so you can see the bottom. That's 6,055 lines. You'll notice that a lot of that was empty space because I was making regular amounts of room, about 300 lines for each quest, so that it could be any variable amount could be used. Like, for example, level 20 ends on script line 180, so it only needs 180 lines to function, whereas the first quest ends on line 45. So it kind of gives you a frame of reference of like the difference between the two quests. You can see here I've got this is dialogue, this is a quest log, these are generic background server instructions. I'm going to explain more of that stuff later. But essentially, this first tab is the big deal that would get uploaded to a server. This secondary tab is kind of a table of contents for all of the conversations. So this is all of the conversations. This is automatically generated. As a quest writer, you don't input anything into these tabs. These are put together automatically based on all of the information you put in the other tabs, and we're going to go over that. So these are all the conversations. I'm going to explain that a little bit further how that works, but essentially this needs to be input somehow into a server, and we probably need to discuss how to do that through this way, but so that when a player talks to a NPC and they have a flag, we'll know what quest script to play. Essentially think of it like a CD, and there's multiple tracks to each CD. Come back to that later. Here's a compilation of all of the quest items involved. Again, this page is automatically assembled based on the information that's put in on the other tabs. So here is mobs and merchants. This is basically telling somebody to provide a secondary function. These items are referred to in the quest scripts, but for example, a player actually purchasing the iron ring at the merchant Yulia's store, that's a function of the player that actually isn't a function of a quest script. So we're going to put these here. There's the mobs. This explains, hey, you need to get a ruined bat wing. And there's a description of where the mob is. These are the rewards that the NPC might give you at the end of your quest. So we go through all of that. So this is start a new character. This is where you're going to create your initial what's going to roll for the entire document. In this case, it's a human magician at Freeport. Here's a world greeting. This was automatically procedurally generated. I'll show you these are all the little pieces that it assembles. So I click this, it's piecing this sentence together. This one's piecing another sentence together. Same thing over here. And these are the first 4 things that happen once you enter the world after making a new character. This takes a little bit of explanation, and I'm not going to go into all of it up front, but essentially there are 30 commands. There's 31 as a special one, but 30 commands. The entire document uses these, I call them operations. This one's actually not used. So there's 30. We'll go into that more later. So each level, there's 3 tabs associated with it. I'm just going to show you the first one for the moment, and then show you all of these other levels are here. You're going to input them one. There's some tutorial stuff at the end. A real quick breakdown is on this page, you're just inputting some basic information, and then you're setting up your NPCs. This, obviously, Quest 1 is super simple, but to get more complicated, any items that you might have set up that are related to this. And then here is where you're going to input some information. And there's 3 columns here. I'm going to go in and explain all of this a little bit further. I'm just going to give you a quick scan of what first quest looks like. And then this little server output is the same thing as the master server output, except that it's just for quest 1. I have server output for each level, but then the master one compiles them all together. This way you can go in and see how all of this breaks down into a database format, hopefully. I'm going to cycle back and have a little more discussion here. Why not just use plain text? Might be a question. Why not just write out the dialogue? Why not just, have these bits and pieces written out in plain text? So we need a way to go back and fix errors. If you load up all of this dialogue into a game and then you play the game and you realize, oh, that's misspelled, or that's telling the wrong information, or it's missing punctuation or something like that, you need to be able to go back and find that without having to go through this long stream of like, hey guy, that's Dustin or whoever is running the database. Can you go find this text? God, who knows where it is in the database, and correct this little spelling. It would be way smoother if we could go back to a document that we're familiar with, that we know where it is, we know where to find it, it's all labeled and everything, fix it, and then re-upload that section. I'm assuming a much simpler process to trying to tell somebody in the database to go fix one box somewhere in the database. So this is intended to be a server neutral part of the project, meaning that when we put all these quests together, we're not just putting it all together for the Hagley server. It's for any other private servers that might show up later on down the road. I know that there's potentially multiple projects happening at once, and I'd like to be able to cater to all of those. So we kind of need a central place for the quest to be, and we will attempt to service any of the servers that pop up. Figuring out how this is going to turn into a database, I don't, to be honest, I just don't know, but I had to make some really super duper strong guesses as to how that works. And if I need to learn MySQL or something to figure out some way to transfer, if I need to remodify how this plays out, remember this is a beta, so whatever I need to do to make this smoother for a database, whatever steps I need to take to make this transfer over to a database as painless as possible is my goal. Obviously, there needs to be some setup and programming ahead of time, but theoretically, once that's set up, we should be able to just keep giving data to the database, and it uploads and it knows what to do with it. That might be me being too optimistic, but that's part of the conversation that I need feedback on. I need somebody to tell me where I'm wrong and what I need to do to fix that. The intention here is that this is a script line. This is a unique number that's generated for Freeport Human Magician level 1. That's what that means. And script line 001, there's 300 script lines for this, potential script lines for this one level. The server would read this first line, and then if it's a 0, it would skip it and would just go on down, and it would assemble and this is sort of a story, or you can think of it as a CD or a record, whatever. But that's how I'm interpreting how that's going to work. Going to break that down for you just a little bit further. So let's go back to what a quest writer does. This first quest, I have all the stuff pre-stamped out for quest 1. If we jump over to, like, say, quest 5, it's going to look different. So this coloration, this tan box is for your input. It's for you as a quest writer to input information. And literally the only places that you input data besides the quest prep, once you get over here to this page, the writer's input, you're literally only putting data in these 3. So everything else on this entire thing is supporting and serving these 3 columns right here. So the first column is literally an operation. You're putting in a number. This brown section shows what that number does. It says, player talks to NPC. This number is, well, which NPC? And the NPC is the one that you set up here. There's only one NPC for this particular quest, right? But if I change this number, I could potentially choose other NPCs. Not going to go into all of the operations right now, but I just want to explain that there's different things for flags, race and class checks, minimum level. These are the trees, these are the dialogue trees. So like this section here is one question box where the NPC says a phrase or asks a question and you can respond. Sometimes there's only one response. Sometimes there's multiple responses. There's always an exit option at the end. And then these are the boxes of dialogue that are displayed afterward. Part of this is just a beta, and so I might go through this more thoroughly later on quest by quest once I'm working with the 1.0 version and we've sorted out all of the streamlining of connecting to a database. So I'm just giving you a very abbreviated demonstration here. But you can see this is meant to emulate exactly what happens. I took all of this from the video that we have of the Freeport Magician. Going back up to the top, this is operation, this is a Y value, this is an X value. 15 means we're going to just display this message. It's the main message box. And then here in the Y value, that's where we type out the words that we want to say. If I change this, it's going to change her dialogue on the spot. And you'll notice that when an NPC asks a question or makes that initial statement, you don't see their name up here, but then you do see their name in the videos. You see the NPCs as sort of like a title to their dialogue. This whole section here in black, it's color-coded. I call it the dialogue console. It's trying to display for you exactly what would be displayed in the game as we go along. There is a server function console also over here that you can look at. It's in green, and this is literally the quest writer saying, hey, the server should be doing this. It's sort of like the quest writer is a conductor, and this is a more specific instruction. Server performs a flag value check. Server performs a race check. If the player is not a human, jump to script line 298. So this is getting more specific, and essentially is a copy of the same operation number over here. Just to show you real quick, there's tons of tables here that support all of that stuff that's going on to the left. Dialogue tables, data tables, things like that. You don't actually have to ever go over here. It's there if you want to look at it. You just literally need to punch in, as a quest writer, you just need to punch in these numbers and understand what they mean. And I have ways of helping to ease you into it. We're going to go back to Quest 1. Notice these are in purple, and that is because I've stamped all of this stuff out for you just to ease you in, and you just go in and focus on dialogue. Watch the video if there is one, or simulate what should be said here to the best of your ability. For Quest 1, it's going to be, oh, what's that merchant? Notice that when the quest writer punches in a 1 here, if I push 0, it goes away. But if there's a 1 and 1, this is the active NPC. So this is a conversation. The NPC is present the whole time. Notice that the NPC has a little tag. That's the tag associated with that NPC. And that is the NPC that the player is talking to this whole time until that conversation's over. The player might go and do other stuff, and then the player comes back and talks to that NPC again. So it shows here exactly who's talking, and that can change over the course of an entire quest chain. Over here on the left is a flag system, flag value. So for quests, flags, there's only one flag at a time being represented. So every time that the player progresses in their quest chain, their flag goes up 1 notch. So the old flag is deactivated and the next flag is activated. So here we call this 8061 because that's the number associated with Freeport Human Magician. 8061, flag 0. Until the player gets to the end of the conversation over here, the first conversation, and Malsus tells the magician to go get a ring. Well, a little flag update happens, and now we're at 1. And that's the little tag that goes with that flag. But actually, at the end, there's another part here. You must purchase an iron ring from Merchant Yulia and return to Malsus. And what that means is the quest log. Remember the quest log? The active quest log display here is what would appear inside the player's quest log. And this gets updated throughout the process of a quest. And Excel is keeping track of that in time. It's sort of like a chain of events. Notice here at the end of the quest, the player is getting some XP, and this does not appear as black text. It's that the XP actually pops up in the bottom in the chat window. So we put that in a different spot. Okay, so this might be a little bit easier to explain over in the server output section. This is all the same information that we were looking at just now over in the writer's input. Active NPC name, it's all right here. Message display console, active quest log, generic background server, secondary quest implementation. What that means is it's keeping track. This right here is compiled throughout the entire level 1 through 20 quests. It's compiled here in quest items just to show, so somebody can go and create an iron ring. I bet $5 Dustin's already done this particular thing, but somebody needs to go make sure an iron ring exists and puts it into Yulia's store list. Somebody needs to put it there because the player is going to go do that. The player needs that iron ring to continue the quest, right? So that's what this purple column is. The blue column is from a player event. This is the player's perspective. Player talks to Malsus. The conversation with Malsus ended. Player purchases iron ring from Yulia. Then the player talks to Malsus again, and the conversation with Malsus ended, and that's the end of the quest. And this brown section is the same exact brown section you saw over in the writer's input. It's just over there as sort of a extra notes, even though it's just hanging out in the server output database section. It's there as a note. A little bit of explanation. I call it the attic and the basement. Right here is a little section for what I call, flag buses. There's only one because you got to think of it like a player is going to start the game and they're going to talk to Malsus for the first time, and their flag is going to be 0 at the beginning. But then after the first conversation, their flag is going to be 1. It's going to be worth 1, like we said earlier. But then when the player comes back, the game needs to know that not to start this first conversation again, it needs to start the second conversation. So here is a little flag. Server performs a flag value check, flag bus. If the flag matches Y, assuming that the player has gone through the first conversation, jump to script line X. If not, go to the next line. So the first time through, this little flag bus is going to the player is going to pass through it because they have F0, not F1. But if they have F1, then they're going to jump to line 30, script line 30, which is, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit and then make it easier. Script line 30 down here, where player talks to the Mouses for the second time. So the bus, you have to think of the bus as like, it's waiting for you, and if you have the right key, it's going to take you to the next part. Whereas this is like a gate, it's called a flag gate, where if the player is a 0, it lets the player through to experience this first conversation, and it blocks the player out if the player does not have F0, flag 0, as their current flag. So you can also think of this like CD tracks. You can choose to, if you have the right credentials, go to the second track of this conversation. So even though level 1 is displayed here in its entirety, that's not how it's experienced from the server's perspective. The server goes, well, I've got this script called level 1 for the Freeport Magician, but depending on which flag you have is which part of the script I'm going to read to you. And that's sort of how that part works. At the bottom of each quest, I have this other information here. I scroll all the way down, which is just essentially a way to boot the player out. 297, 298, 299. This is just a rock steady way to end the conversation so the player can free up. NPC will never have any compatible quests. So like if somebody else is talking to Mouses, he needs to say some sort of default message to them. Or if like say the player, even the active player, has completed all the quests, he's going to say some default message. That's kind of the attic and the basement part that I was referring to. So conversations start literally by this 1, and there's all this content, and they always end with a 30. We start with a 1 and with a 30, like that. 31, I have a special function called OP31, and that's like a special message. If I type in 31 here, send a special message to from the quest writer to the server team. So there's some situations that are outside the function of this quest document. Like, for example, in one of the later quests, you have to kill a mother broodfin shark up in Tembe, and you have to kill the smaller sharks first in order for the mother to appear. That's kind of a semi-common thing that happens in the game, but it's outside the scope of programming this as a quest. The server team needs to know that that's the situation, so somebody needs to go make sure that that function works and that the mobs that are spawning in that area are functioning in that way as intended. There's another quest where you hand somebody poison and they die. So literally you hand them an item and then they die. And that is not something that functions normally as part of a quest. It's one of those special things that happen. I'm under the distinct impression that a server could make the NPC, fall on the ground and make the death, or whatever, sound. And that's part of your quest. That's part of, how you finish the conversations that they're dead. That's what the function 31 is for. Okay, so that's potentially really boring, but relatively brief description of what this document does. Some things that this document does not yet do. I've only focused on quests. I haven't set up a process for what an NPC says by default. So like if you were to say, like, walk up to a soldier in a city and they just say some random thing like move along or whatever, and they're not part of any quest, they're just basically there for decoration. Every NPC should have something by default to say, even the quest ones, because anybody might walk up and talk to Mouses and he's not part of any of their quest lines, and so he needs to have something to say. This does not address any of that. Somebody at some point needs to go in and give every NPC something to say. And I have some ideas on how to do that initially, but that's not the focus of where I'm at right now. Also, this document does not handle faction. I don't really ever remember even talking to NPC. I know that I did. I just don't remember when I played the game what an NPC did if you were not supposed to talk to them, if they were the wrong race or whatever, and they didn't actually kill you outright. Also, this document is not yet set up to express stats for quest items. And Tony Kane, I'm thinking of you. These items, somebody needs to not just create the item, but they need to add stats to the item. And that, at the moment, is outside the scope of what this document does. Theoretically, though, as long as we're keeping this tag here, we should be able to reference, like I should be able to take this page and then go reference these items and then apply the stats somewhere, somehow, even if that means this page needs to get put into another Excel sheet and somebody adds the stats to them and then they get uploaded. That's another process that if I need to create ways to do that, I will, but it'd be great if somebody else took that over and just manage the items, because I'm really charging forward on just the quest writing and getting those pieces together. So basically, I kind of said this earlier, but I would eventually like this document to be able to get as close as possible to it just being able to dump straight into a server. And if that means that it needs to go through some other database software like MySQL or something like that, then that's totally fine. But I need somebody to say, hey, we need it to be a different way, or we need you to format these things a specific way, and just tell me, and so that we can set it up here and make it as painless as possible. All right, so that's it for this at the moment. Again, I'm very excited. I plan on jumping on Keynos as soon as possible and punching out those quests, and I know I've got several people, legacy members of the Writers Guild, and I will be inviting more people. As soon as we can get some of these pieces put together, we'll be inviting more people to be writers. So if you're interested in becoming a writer, please send me a private message. Outside of that, I will also be immediately helping finish LFG episode 5 and getting that up to YouTube. Chris is ready to move on to the next exciting adventure with LFG. So anyway, I think that is about it for today. I'm going to wrap this up and hope everybody is doing well. Let me know what you think. All right, have a good night.